አደባባይ ሚዲያ ለወገንተኝነት ጀርባውን የሰጠ ጊዜያዊ ጥቅምን አምቢኝ ብሎ የዘመመን ሊያቀና እውነትና እውቀትን አስከትሎ ኢኮኖሚያዊና መንፈሳዊ መረጃዎችን እንካችሁ ይላል። ትኩስ ዜናዎች፣ ዘጋቢ ፊልሞች፣ ጥልቅ ትንታኔዎች በአደባባይ ሚዲያ ይቀርባሉ። ራዕያችን ጊዜውን ያማከለና ዘመኑን የዋጀ በእውነት የነጠሩ መረጃዎችን በእውቀት ደግፎ ለሀገራችን ብሎ ለዓለም ሕዝብ ማዳረስ ነው። አድሬሳችን አደባባይ ኢንፎ ሚዲያ @gmail.com፣ ዌብሳይታችን www.adebabai.com። ያግኙን፣ ይርዱን። የሁላችንም ስለሆነች ኢትዮጵያ በአደባባይ እንዘግባለን። አደባባይ ሚዲያ።
Apologies. Welcome everyone and thank you for joining us. This is Dagmawi Media's Your Digest program. My name is Yohannes and I'll be your host for today. Dagmawi Media's Your Digest program is a weekly English program that we host here on Dagmawi Media on Sundays, where we talk about topics that affect our community. Today, we're going to be talking about the Amara Protest movement that we've been seeing in the diaspora, especially in the last few months. We've invited guests, youth activists within our community to come and talk to us about what their vision and goal is with this movement and what they wish to accomplish and lessons that they could teach us about their activism. I'd like to invite everyone to participate in this dialogue, to like and share with their loved ones, and to stay with us.
Adababa Media Yanina. Adababa Media Yanina. Adababa Media Yanina. Adababa Media Yahulachinina. Yangametasab Adababa Media in Manakatalian Nantas. Do your parents watch Adababa Media? Watch, follow, subscribe, and help Adababa. Adababa Media. Logan Tanginet John is
አደባባይ ሚዲያ ለወገንተኝነት ጀርባውን የሰጠ ጊዜያዊ ጥቅምን አምቢኝ ብሎ የዘመመን ሊያቀና እውነትና እውቀትን አስከትሎ ኢኮኖሚያዊና መንፈሳዊ መረጃዎችን እንካችሁ ይላል። ትኩስ ዜናዎች፣ ዘጋቢ ፊልሞች፣ ጥልቅ ትንታኔዎች በአደባባይ ሚዲያ ይቀርባሉ። ራዕያችን ጊዜውን ያማከለና ዘመኑን የዋጀ በእውነት የነጠሩ መረጃዎችን በእውቀት ደግፎ ለሀገራችን ብሎ ለዓለም ሕዝብ ማዳረስ ነው። አድሬሳችን አደባባይ ኢንፎ ሚዲያ @gmail.com፣ ዌብሳይታችን www.adebabai.com። ያግኙን፣ ይርዱን። የሁላችንም ስለሆነች ኢትዮጵያ በአደባባይ እንዘግባለን። አደባባይ ሚዲያ።
Welcome back, everyone. And if you're just joining us, welcome. Today, we're going to be talking about the Mahara Protest movement that we've been seeing, especially in the last few months, mostly which is started in the Shashamane and Tsewa'e attacks, where we've seen cities leveled to the ground and the government not being able to respond. And then following that, we've seen things happening in Jimma, Ataye, Metekel, and other areas, and especially in Oromia and Metekel. And as we've seen, and also as the Prime Minister of Ethiopia has mentioned, that this is being done by forces that are currently within the government. So the structure of these attacks and atrocities are also being committed by people that are currently within the government structure. So what can we do, and what exactly is the purpose of this movement that we've been seeing within the diaspora, especially here in the US, Canada, Europe, Australia, and many other places where people are coming out and saying that citizens have to be protected and the OLF has to be held accountable, and government should be able to protect its people and guarantee safety, which it has not been able to do because either that it doesn't know when the attacks are happening, or it claims that there isn't enough resources to defend citizens. But since, especially in the last year, we've seen hundreds of thousands of Ethiopian Amhara people being displaced and also being killed and massacred and basically being handpicked. We've seen pictures of labeling of Amara houses and coming up with list of names into cities, as we've seen in Shashamane, to commit these atrocities. But if you are looking at these issues from outside, meaning that if you may not necessarily speak any of the languages that we speak in Ethiopia, or you're a foreigner and want to understand what the situation is, it makes it really difficult to look through and really figure out what exactly the issue is, because we have two different camps that are talking about this issue. The first camp is the one that says what's going on in Ethiopia right now is not necessarily a genocide or singling out of the ethnically Amhara people, but instead it's a conversation, or more so a freedom fighters trying to reinstate their rights to freedom and self-governance. Whereas there's another camp that's saying you can't have freedom and self-governance on the ashes of people by killing and prosecuting them just because of their ethnic group. So this is a conversation that we're going to try to have today and really figure out what's going on, especially here in the diaspora and the different narratives that has been presented to us. How far could we really look at the prosecution of the ethnically Amhara people within Ethiopia? I have invited two guests today, Zenash and Dagmawi, to come and talk to us about this. And they are people that have been really active, youth that have been really active around this conversation, especially in the social media and protests that happen in their cities. So thank you, Dagmawi and Zenash, for being here with us today.
Thanks for having us. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. So tell us a bit about yourselves. I know I said y'all are advocates for ethnically Amhara people and the prosecution that's going on in Ethiopia right now. Dagmai, tell us a bit about yourself, and Zenash, you could pick up.
Sure. Yeah, my name is Dagmawi Yohannes. Just for, I guess, maybe since I was in elementary school, I've been attending a lot of protests with my uncle, and that's how I first started getting in tune with what's going on back home. Starting with I think I want to say like the 05 protests. I remember there was a lot of activism going on around that time. That was my first memory of, Ethiopian politics and things like that. And then I took a break. I kind of didn't really care for politics or things like that going on back home for a long time. And then more so in the last recent months after what's going on to Amara people in Ethiopia, I've been more aware about about all the atrocities and all the unfortunate events that have been going on. So I want to say around like November, Makadar, when that happened. I started posting about it, things like that, and then I just started following up with what's going on in Oromia. And then I'm just trying my best to learn more about what's going on and staying on top of it the best I can.
Thank you. And Zenash?
Well, thank you so much, Hiwa, for having us here today. My name is Zenash. I'm from Seattle. I'm Ethiopian, a proud Ethiopian, and a very proud ethnic Amara. Just like any other Amara, I did not grow up identifying myself based on my ethnicity. I'm a proud Ethiopian again, based on our rich history, culture, and love for Ethiopia that I was raised on. Not knowing all this time and realizing that Amaras in general have faced human rights violations for multiple decades, especially during my childhood, up until recently, seeing the attacks that have happened on Amara people, I would say alarmingly after the assassination of Hachalu Hundessa, I started to advocate for Amaras and doing my own research and learning all of the things that Amaras have been through the last 30 years. It was really, really alarming to me. So I looked at it as if, hey, if I was living in Ethiopia, whether it was back then or now, it could be me. So I think it's really important to be a voice for our people. And so that's kind of where that started for me.
Thank you for sharing that. I think it was the same way for me as well. I didn't realize this was something that's been going on for years and years. Even when Dagmawi was saying, I've been going to protests since I was a teenager. I didn't even know there were protests until about a year ago. And I think that speaks volumes to, especially Ethiopians in the diaspora. When we grow up here, we tend to be very involved in the cultural aspect of what's going on in Ethiopia, and the holidays and the outfits and the clothes and the food and all that stuff, which is really beautiful. but we completely forget or negate the people that are living there and the kind of conditions that they're living in. So I think, whether we like it or not, especially with the social media generation right now, it feels like there's an awakening that I'm noticing, which I'm thankful for. And I've also been learning a lot and growing in that as well. So to start this conversation, really, especially with what's going on in Ethiopia, with all the different chaoses, and it feels like an angry region right now, why is it important to talk about only of Amara ethnic groups? Because as we've been seeing, even within Oromia, right, Christian Oromo people are being killed, right? What's going on in Afar and Somalia, what's going on in Tigray, and what's going on in Gurage areas as well, people being disenfranchised and displaced. Why is it important? Why do you feel like it's important for you guys to speak only of, or especially of ethnically Amara people, Zenash?
Well, I think it's very imperative to speak and really let the world know about all the barbaric atrocities that are happening and continue to happen to Amaras. Amaras are very under-advocated for, regardless of the fact that they're facing a clear genocide. We have clear evidence of what's been going on. They're killers, these Oromo extremists, Oromo militia, Gumis militias, who are posting selfies, posting pictures prior to killing people on Facebook, yet we see nothing from the outside world, the Western world, international media, and specifically the Ethiopian federal government. So when people say, why are you only speaking about Amaras? In general, nobody has really advocated for Amaras. If we look at history in the past, especially the last few decades, Amaras have faced, like I said earlier, human rights violations, I'd say more than any other ethnic group. Yet those things have never been out. They've never been put out there publicly. Nobody's advocated for them. They have always been silent under this name of Ethiopian, that Amaras are proud to die as Ethiopians, and that should not be normalized. And so until we have enough people that are going to advocate for us as Ethiopians and as Amaras, we have to continue to advocate for our people. I believe as far as other ethnic groups, when their people are facing atrocities, they're very well organized. They proudly speak up for their people. Whereas Amaras, like I said earlier, we have really never been raised as, you're Amara. So people also have a hard time disconnecting the two, feeling like, hey, if you speak up for Amaras, you're taking away from your Ethiopian identity, which actually, in fact, is, I think it's the complete opposite. To me, it comes hand in hand. And until these atrocities stop, we have to continue to speak up, because obviously, even with the protests that were happening here in the US, as well as the millions of Amaras who protested in Ethiopia, it hasn't stopped. So until those things stop, we need to continue to fight for our people. Again, it could be you, I, or Dagam. We are just lucky to live in the US, where we can have these conversations peacefully. We can advocate for our people. So to me, I think it's our core responsibility as Amaras, because wouldn't we want someone to do that for us?
Absolutely. And Dagmawi, do you have anything to add to this? Why is it necessary to advocate specifically to ethnically Amhara people? I think you might be.
Everything Zenash said, most definitely. But just to add on to that, like when you see some other ethnic groups, I'm not going to say all of them, but a lot of the ones that are publicized, they seem to have a lot of unity when it comes to their vocalism and activism. They always have the same message. Whenever 10 people die from their region, they always rally behind, Twitter, Instagram, whatever other social media apps they got to make their message known. And they also like to go out of, they don't only advocate towards East Africans, they like to advocate towards Americans and other people from outside of their demographic, which is good as well. So, and I don't see anybody advocating for Amaras that are not Amara on the most, most, of course, I'm not going to say everybody. I see a few that are not Amara advocating for us as well. But when you said that, like, why shouldn't we advocate for all of Ethiopia rather than just our ethnic group? I mean, you know, a lot of people have been facing like extinction for the last 30 years, in my opinion. So I feel like if we stay silent for our people even more longer, then it's going to be too late. Like right now, it's like it's time to go right now, in my opinion. Like if we don't advocate for our people now, it's going to be too late. Like we're going to be wiped off and never heard of again, just like a lot of other ethnic groups have been historically. So yeah, in order to, I don't want to say counteract, but in order to, I guess, match the same energy that some other ethnic groups are doing, we need to advocate for our people twice as better as they're doing, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think something that I've noticed as well, especially with what's going on in Oromia region and Metekel, it's a moment where I really realized that Ethiopia is really divided, because it feels like, you know, the Oromo movements only advocate for Oromo, and Tigray movements only advocate for Tigray, and only when Tigray is attacked, and other movements as such only when their own group is touched. And it's really heartbreaking, because I've seen a lot of, I follow a lot of Amara movements, Amara advocates as well, which something that I really appreciate. At least for what I've seen is, yes, there is a sense of advocating for specifically ethnic Amaras, but I've also seen we all share information about Ethiopia, what's going on in Ethiopia in general, which I haven't seen in other activism as well. And it really speaks volume to our own division and the idea of who is Ethiopian and who is not Ethiopian, because we should all be outraged when one Ethiopian is killed. But that doesn't seem the case, because I think we got into that point where like, what's not happening to me, so I'm just going to chill for a moment on the mindset that I've seen. Do you all think there's a difference between advocating for ethnically Amhara people and advocating for Ethiopia?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
Do you see there is a difference between advocating for ethnically Amhara people and advocating for Ethiopia in general?
Okay, yeah, you can go ahead, Zenash, sorry.
Okay. To me, advocating for Amaras and advocating for Ethiopia, honestly, they come hand in hand, because when you stand up for the injustices that are happening to Amaras, you're respecting those who fought by blood for Ethiopia, our forefathers, our ancestors, and Amaras and Amara resistance groups were mainly responsible for the continued independence and sovereignty of Ethiopia. So Amaras are known for their unity. Amaras are known for their Ethiopianism, for being proud Ethiopians. As most of you may know, I've never heard anybody even use the word Amara until this last, I would say maybe this last year. We have never identified ourselves as Amaras. We've always been proud Ethiopians. We're still proud Ethiopians. But when we're being ethnically targeted specifically for being Amara, we need to be honest with ourselves and identify that and let people know that, hey, we're being killed because of this. We're at this point, we're not being killed because we've been proud Ethiopians. Yet Amaras are the ones who have always been very, very loud about being Ethiopian, have again fought and died for their country. So to me, without Amaras, there is no Ethiopia. There is no such thing as unity, because the groups that are attacking and killing Amaras are anti-Amara and specifically anti-Ethiopian groups who want to supposedly liberate themselves from Ethiopia. So if we care about Ethiopia, we have to care about Amaras.
I love that. Dagmawi, do you have anything to add to that?
Look at the whole spectrum, like when the Tigray or Oromo people, they like to, I guess, like coexist with the activism and things like that. But you don't see any like they'll mention all the other ethnic groups, but they'll purposely leave out Amaras. And it just, it speaks for itself right there. Like, those two activism movements in itself is just like filled by hatred, and they're reflecting what's happening back home, which is the mission to get rid of Amaras. So yeah, this is why I urge every Amara out here to just stop advocating for Ethiopia, because Ethiopia obviously doesn't care for Amara people. So if you're gonna advocate for something, you gotta advocate for your own people until we get out of this mess personally, whoever, and who knows how long that's gonna take to happen. It's not only tweeting and social things that can change things back home. A lot of things need to happen on the ground for things to be peaceful eventually too. But in order to just support people back home, we need to just support only our people. Otherwise, it's going to be too late, like I said earlier.
I'm gonna ask. I need you guys to really explain to me what it means to be Amara, because I think we had a guest a while ago where he talked about ethnicity is kind of nonsensical because we should talk about languages and who speaks and who doesn't speak a certain language to say, okay, you're Amara speaking, you're Oromo speaking, you're Tigrayan speaking, or any other language that I know that you have always mentioned in the media, so that kind of sticks with me. But what does it mean? Like, I guess, how did you decide, or when did you realize you are Amara? And what does that mean necessarily? Just unpack that for me a bit, Zenash.
So
Okay.
to be honest,
sorry.
Thank you, Hiwa. So, like I said, I never identified myself as being, I identified myself first, I should say, as being Amara. As most of us, we're just Ethiopians. Amara is an ethnic group in Ethiopia. The national language of Ethiopia is Amaranya. So as far as whoever that was referring to language, majority of the people in Ethiopia speak Amaranya, just like they also speak other languages. Does that mean that they're from that ethnic group? No. So to me, what is being Amara? Like for example, my family comes from the Gojam region, which they are Amara people. So it means being a proud Ethiopian. In my opinion, it's an ethnic group. But does that mean that we're better or we're different? No. I think we're all equally the same. It's just there's been so many false narratives spread about Amara people that I myself am just finding out. I really never knew any of these things, like I said, because again, most of us have never really grown up like that. So I can't even give you an answer of like, hey, this is specifically what being Amara means. But I personally my family comes from the Gojam region, which also is a part of the Matakal region, where there are a lot of Amaras who are original Amara land, which is in Matakal, and lots of Amaras are there. They're being killed. So, yeah.
Thank you for sharing that with us. And Dagmar?
Okay. Yeah, I agree with everything she said. But just to add on to that, Amara, just obviously from the map, it's 4 provinces historically: Wallo, Gondar, and Showa, and Gojam. But some people like to, like you said, some people like to discount that Amaras were even an ethnic group to begin with. But that's just a lot of fake selective history, in my opinion, because if you look back on history itself, we have Amaras have written history since at least the late 1100s or the early 1200s. So to say that Amaras were never an ethnic group by itself is just dismissing it. It's just adding to this genocidal narrative that's going on right now. So yeah, Amara has always been an ethnic group. It's not just because of our language. It's not because of these borders that currently exist. Like the borders obviously shifted and changed. It was, and things like that. And I know Zenash said that we might not be better than any other ethnic group, but in my opinion, we're probably the largest because there's never been a proper census done in Ethiopia. But and also we're the most culturally and dominant and just most influential, just historical wide. If you look back at a lot of the emperors during the Ethiopian Empire, a lot of them were from the Amara ethnic group, and even our language, Amharic, had been the most widely spoken language in Ethiopia since at least the 9th century. So we have a lot to do with Ethiopia being still standing here today. So if you take out Amara from Ethiopia, there's no Ethiopia. But I don't know if you can say that the same from all of the other ethnic groups, in my opinion. Just my personal opinion.
Yeah,
I completely agree with you. And I want to correct myself, or I don't know if you heard me wrong, Dagam. I didn't say I don't know if you thought I said better or bigger, but you brought up a good topic here. So I don't think that we're better than anybody, obviously. But I agree with every single thing that you mentioned. And I think that's where a lot of the anti-Amara and the hate comes from, is not willing to acknowledge all of those historical facts based on them being true. It is what it is. And number two, another really important thing that recently I've been talking to some of my friends about is I personally believe that the Amara ethnic group is the largest ethnic group in Ethiopia, although they're constantly saying that it's the second largest group, because number one, you can't trust the census and the data given by the previous administration. And number two, with the amount of Amaras that have been killed, that also takes out a huge number of ethnic Amaras.
And I think we'll come back to this conversation as well. One of the main reasons of what we're seeing right now, especially with the anti-Amara sentiment, is these narratives that you guys are mentioning. So I'd like to get deep into that conversation as well. But in that sense, let me show you a quick video about like what's going on and how it's being perceived, especially people that have international media access, and how they're presenting what's going on in Oromia region and the Tekle region, and what the sentiment is as you guys are mentioning earlier about, is it about freedom or not, or is it about just pure anti-Amara sentiment that we have?
Oh,
I think I think there is no doubt that Ethiopia over the last 2 years has become a scene of utter mayhem, and civilians have become the casualties as a result of the violence that we see up and down the country. But I think it's important to remember that the violence that we see today actually started in Western Oromia and Southern Oromia in 2019 as things politically changed in the country. The nature of the violence changed. Yes, Amhara civilians have been targeted in certain areas, but there is absolutely no indication from the evidence that I have seen that they were targeted simply on account of being Amharas, let alone that there is an Amhara genocide that is going on. Genocide means, you have to have the intent to bring about the extermination of that particular group in whole or in part in order for this to constitute an act of genocide. But I think it's important to kind of situate the debate in Ethiopia in its broader context and understand what is actually driving this violence. What you have in Ethiopia is two contrasting visions of the future. And this vision resulting into a major violence. Let me finish. So on the one hand, what you have is a vision that wants to centralize the Ethiopian state and dismantle the current multinational federal system that exists in the country. And this vision is primarily promoted by the Prime Minister and the majority of the Amhara ethnic group, including those who do not support the Prime Minister. On the other hand,
I'm going to give you one more sentence because we can't do lectures. We have to have a conversation. Sorry. Finish the thought, but finish it swiftly. Go ahead.
I think the point I'm trying to make is that the violence that we see here in Ethiopia is a manifestation of these clashes of conflict, clashes of vision of the future between the various groups in Ethiopia. But in terms of the allegations that has been made that there is a genocide going on against Sahara, there is
a different vision for Ethiopia. That is why you think there is violence happening. Tewodos, go ahead, please.
So I think this speaks volumes to what you guys are also talking about. There's that sense that we see that, what we're calling the Amara culture, it tends to be dominant. Like you all said, Amharic is a national language, and there's this narrative of that being forced onto people and their language being purposely and systematically being destroyed within Ethiopia, which is absolute false narrative because everyone speaks Amharic and their own language. But that's the kind of old Ethiopia and centralized Ethiopia they're talking about. So how do you all see that narrative going with, the building of the new Ethiopia and the not wanting of the old Ethiopia that he's talking about here? Zenash, I'll give you the floor first, and Dagmawi.
Well, actually, everything that he said is really to hide what's really going on in the Oromia region, hide what his people are doing. He clearly supports what's happening in the Oromia region. He clearly supports the Amara genocide. That is just an excuse to cover what's going on. There is absolutely no justification for anything that is happening in that region, whether it's to liberate yourself or whatever you believe in. There's absolutely no justification for genocide. And to claim that, you know, people are fighting to be liberated or wanting to go to this live in their own way, etc. It's just a complete insult to what's happening to the current Amara people in that region. And then to go back to him stating that the federal government is trying to impose a new Ethiopia, to me, I actually think that quite opposite. I think the current federal government is trying to impose this, I guess what they call Oromumalized Ethiopia, and not a unified Ethiopia, not a place where people can live peacefully, people can wake up the next day. So I don't agree with anything that he said, and he's known for being very anti-Amara, so I'm not surprised that he wants to blatantly deny the genocide that's happening to Amara people. So that is my opinion on that. It's spreading this false narrative that, again, these anti-Amara and anti-Ethiopians continue to do.
And Dagma?
Yeah. The way he explained it, just pretty much just denies the Amara genocide just completely. And just it really frustrates me to see people following people like that, because he obviously has extremist views that are genocidal and hurtful. Like those kind of words are the reason that people are continuously still dismissing what's going on to our people. But I wouldn't suggest anybody take anything what he says seriously. But unfortunately, there's other people that still will. But to say that Amara people are not getting ethnically targeted is just foolishness. Because if anything, Amara genocide is the only one in Ethiopia that you can really say is a genocide. Because say for example, the one in Tigray, people say that's the genocide, but that's obviously it's not ethnically targeted killings. It's a war going on over there, and the ENDF is over there, the Ethiopian military, Eritreans, whatnot, they're over there. And when there's a war, there's going to be war crimes, unfortunately. But you can't start a war and then turn around and still be fighting against the aggressor at that and say that is a genocide. When you look at the Amara people in Oromia, they're unarmed. They're usually parents or children that are defenseless against each other because they're against other aggressors. Because in Oromia region, Amaras are not allowed to be armed for whatever reason, because they don't have the same rights as the other Muslim in there. But they're getting ethnically targeted clearly because the people that are getting killed, they don't have any way to defend themselves. So you can't say that it's I don't even know what his excuse is, to be honest, for him to say that it's not ethnic cleansing. Like he's trying to say that this is because there's two political views of Ethiopia, because most Amara people believe in Ethiopia going forward instead of disintegrating, and some Oromo extremists believe that they should get independence or whatever. Like I don't understand how that justifies what's going on. That doesn't justify anything. Like what does a unborn child being killed out of the mother's womb have to know about political views, or even like a young mother or even the young father? What do they have to care about politics and whatnot? They just want to live, be able to feed their children.
Yeah. And I think he's an interesting person, because he was a really great advocate back in the days against TPLF and what's going on within Ethiopia and such, and really explaining. I've seen a video of him talking about how TPLF has done such a great job of separating ethnic Amaras and ethnic Oromos, and make sure that those two have as much friction as possible so that they never unite. And that was part of his rhetoric back in the days when TPLF was in power. But right now it seems like, one, he's in support of TPLF and sees it as, people have the right, regions have the right to be independent, even though that was never the question when TPLF comes about. And he also sees what's going on in especially in Akaye and such, that it's, Oromuma finally giving up the game of, the game on pulse of people, saying that, like, let's negotiate this, sitting down and negotiating. And now it's finally taking up arms is like the last resort. People are seeing it as a last resort for their own freedom. So he's just an interesting character when it comes to that. And he has a lot of access to Al Jazeera and other media. So he gets to create this image that you've been seeing around, and what makes really people uncomfortable as far as like participating in what's going on within Ethiopia as well, I believe. But so where do you all think this anti-Amhara rhetoric comes from, and where did it start from, Dagmawi?
It's where it started from. Some people say that it started from the Italian colonial occupation or whatever, but I don't know. There's no way to really confirm that's where it really started from, because in my opinion, I think it could have started way before that, because obviously Amhara has had, like I said before, cultural dominance, and they were the most influential ethnic group for hundreds of years before that. So I wouldn't be surprised if this quote unquote like inferiority complex started way before that. Let's think about it like maybe it made sense for it to kind of exist like during the the 1800s or 1700s or whatever, but like nowadays Amharas they didn't benefit from the monarchy days or whatever. They didn't benefit from any of that. So for some other ethnic groups, it's not all of them, I know that, it's like very, very select ethnic groups that have this kind of like huge hate from Amharas. I think it's just a nonsense inferiority complex nowadays. There's no way to explain it. Like I guess they're upset that their ethnic group didn't have like this sort of dominance over all this just historically. They're probably just upset about that, because there's no way to justify what's going on. There's no way for them to justify their the hatred for Amaras. It's just inferiority complex, simple as that.
And I think also what makes it really interesting for me is when people are mentioning the dominance of the culture, and this idea fits really well into the idea of the victimizer and the victim and the colonization idea. So just this Western rubric of someone must really colonize you, someone must really want to destroy you and your culture to come and enforce something onto you. And that's how they see the Amhara culture and the Amharic language as if it was forced onto them, and a way to remove or destroy their culture. And because we have a Western understanding of what that means, they have the ability to sell that a lot more easily. And it really is. I like how you said it's an inferiority complex, because if you feel less than, regardless of what the situation is, it can't be helped, I feel like. So thank you for bringing that up. And Zenash, where do you think this comes from?
Well, I'll talk closely about, I guess, the last 30 years, but in general, I think the anti-Amara narrative stems from colonialist, separatist, and like liberation groups. Again, I want to kind of just talk about the decade that I've been living in. So especially with the Tigray Liberation Front, TPLF, which is the Liberation Front who is, I would say, responsible for what's been going on now. The TPLF manifesto has called Amara their greatest enemy. I believe it's in like the first line. I think that's what you have up right now. Yes. Calling for the extermination of Amaras, committing a silent genocide on the Ethiopian people for the last 27 years, and specifically targeting ethnic Amaras. Millions of Amaras have died under the TPLF regime, as well as Ethiopians who stood against what they stood for. They've also sterilized Amara women without their consent, preventing them, from conceiving children. And then most recently, the TPLF militia who committed a genocide on the Amara people in Maikadra, which was completely downplayed. We didn't really see that anywhere. I think there was one article out there about that. But what's going on today, I think, has a huge part, or TPLF is really responsible for spreading that anti-Amara narrative, spreading fake information, revisionist history throughout education in Ethiopia, and specifically really targeting the Oromos, which we see once TPLF was no longer in power, we see them technically attacking Amaras, consistently ethnically attacking Amaras. And what you see with the whole OLF and OLA and Oromo Special Forces, they kind of are using the same exact tactic. And when I see even Oromo Diaspora, some of the things that they put out there on their social media is the revisionist history that was. For you guys.
Go ahead, yeah.
We're seeing the revisionist history, the propaganda, the anti-Amara hate campaigns that was spread by TPLF all these years is now the new face is now OLF. So I really, really believe that they are really responsible for that the hate that we're seeing now.
And I think something that I've noticed, I know with our generation, it's easy to see with, especially with Instagram, because majority of our age group and younger gets their information from Instagram, mostly majority. I know some are still on Facebook, but the idea that keeps on being perpetuated over and over again, the kind of information that you're able to find and how well it's done. I think there's such a well-organized, targeted way of communicating this information of, people being the victim of. And I don't know how, I don't understand. You must really hate people to really continue to tell them they are, inferior, they have been targeted, they are being prosecuted over and over again when that's not necessarily the truth. And Ethiopians really being used as a means to gain power and to get into power, because I really don't believe that, people on the ground within Oromia region, and we've heard multiple stories of how they saved their neighbors, how they were helping out and such. And it creates that friction of go ahead and kill this. And there's that understanding of who's going to get in power, who's going to be the leader of this new Oromia or region that they're trying to create, and what is really the purpose behind it. And it really is using, I feel like, the same propaganda that TPLF has been able to use with OLF to say somebody has to be the victimizer, somebody has to be the colonizer for you to sell your ideas. Otherwise, like you said, you really don't have any concrete means of selling your ideas. It's not necessarily ideas, it's just a propaganda that they have. So looking at it and really understanding that this comes in, 30 years more specifically, a lot more in detail documented. And I know there's more documentation that is coming out, well-organized work where you can actually find people's names and all different things that has been going on. What can we do, both in the short term, in the immediate term now, and in the long term? What are the different things that we could do to make sure that we speak out for Ethiopians that have been victims of political gain? How do we prevent these kind of things from escalating or from continuing on?
Well, first and foremost, I think that it's really important that we are not silent. I think especially Amaras, we have been silent for very long, and I'm so happy to see that although it may not be a huge shift and we may not have extremely loud voices, our voices are growing. And so we cannot normalize being killed. We cannot normalize genocide. We cannot justify it, or we cannot ignore it under the name of Ethiopia, under the name of unity. Moving forward, we need to be organized as Amaras in general, because if we are not organized, we don't stand up for our people, it's going to continue to happen. And really, that's why it's happened for so long, because Amaras have been so humble and so quiet. They're very non-violent people. As you can see, the people, like Dagam said earlier, the people that are facing the current genocide are unarmed people. They're not even people who have weapons in their homes. They're poor people, they're farmers, unborn children. And even their parents, they're not people that are, sitting around in their house with weapons. So I think another important thing too is moving forward, people need to have protection. We need to be able to protect ourselves. One of the reasons why people are so easily targeted is because, number one, they're defenseless. And so we need to change that here especially us Diaspora, if we are given that opportunity, by being a voice for them, by fundraising. And I know that people have worked on things like that, but I really think, number one, protecting ourselves needs to be a priority. Protecting Amaras needs to be a priority, not for people in the Diaspora, but for people all over the world. Or else when people are attacked, when you have somebody knocking on your door in the middle of the night, which I've seen videos and I've seen witness accounts where they're saying they're coming in the middle of the night, when it's dark, and killing people, or telling them, hey, go take out all your money in your bank or give me everything that you have or I'm going to kill you. So protection is key. Number two, one thing that I think that we really need that will definitely make a difference is we need strong Amara leadership in Ethiopia. Right now, we don't have anybody that's in the federal government that can truly represent us. I think one of the biggest things that would help not just Amaras, but Ethiopia as a whole, is if we had Amara leadership, positive Amara leadership, who has genuine concerns for all Ethiopian people, the safety of Ethiopian people, and actually followed law and order. Because with the current federal government, we are seeing this genocide play out. It's been going on for far too long. People are dying every single day, yet no justice is being served. There is no law and order. So if we have a federal government that is not protecting civilians, and not just Amara civilians, Ethiopians as a whole, we're really not going to get there. So we need change in the federal government. We need to continue to advocate for our people. We need to continue to motivate people to speak up. I think once we grow larger in numbers, the more pressure that we apply. For example, I noticed here with the protests that we had here in Seattle, DC, LA, there were protests kind of consistent for a while, and all of a sudden you see mass protest in Ethiopia, which is really great to see. And when the government feels pressure is when they speak up, or when they feel like the people are not supporting them. So we just have to continue to advocate for our people until this stops. And even when it does stop, I think in general, as Amaras, we need to organize. We need to be able to help our people financially. We need to be able to help them educationally, because that's really important too. People need to be educated in order to be able to speak up for themselves, in order to lead Ethiopia in the future. Because what we're seeing now, we're seeing a lot of these people with these, like you said earlier, with these PhDs and so forth, access to media or being given spots in the federal government or local governments because of education, and obviously because of ethnicity too. But I think those are one of the main things that we really need to do.
Thank you. And Dagmawi, what do you think we could do in the short term, and what do we need to do? What do we need to continue to do in the long term as well to be able to combat this kind of violence within Ethiopia? Okay.
Yeah. Well, just in the short term to combat what's going on to a lot of people, what we can do from the diaspora, in my opinion, is just support everybody back home, all the people back home. However you can do it, financially. Keep sending as much money as you can. Grab one person as you can back home that has connections to people that might be going through something right now due to the displacements or anything. And I think it's a great idea to personally keep contact with at least one person back home, because nowadays you never know what these GoFundMes and stuff be ending up. Yeah, that's one thing. And then the second thing is connect with Amara Association of America. The website is amharaamerica.org. And they are a great organization that have been lobbying for our people lately. Tedros, that was on that Al Jazeera segment that you showed earlier, he's the head of it. And I heard him talking. He's really inspirational, the things that he does. He has people that can really assist people back home that are displaced due to the ethnic conflicts. But yeah, just go ahead and donate to Amara Association of America, and that's a really great place to start. And they're trustworthy as well. And as far as the activism and things like that, if you're Amara, if you consider yourself Amara, I consider myself Amara, and I've been trying my best to distance myself from the Ethiopian, the broad Ethiopian identity, because that's what's been, I guess, setting us back these last few years. So I've been trying to just stay focused on our people only, our causes only, and just try to advocate for them on the internet the best we can. Even if you post one thing and then, you know, some people that are outside of our community sees it and, you know, at least are aware about what's going on, then that's better than them not knowing anything about us at all, because, you know, that's what's been going on in the last 30 years. A lot of issues kind of been circulating within our own little Ethiopian community, and nobody outside of that really knew about it. And yeah, that's one thing that a few other ethnic groups been doing a good job at when it comes to advocating. They do a good job as far as getting the ears of and attention of people from outside of the Ethiopian and African community, which is really good. So being present on social media is really important. I suggest every Amara person out there to be posting at least, you know, as often as you can, you know, stay updated with Amhara_awareness on Instagram. They do a good job as posting in English everything that's going on to our people. Whenever there's an unfortunate event that goes on, they do a good job of making a post about it and really nice graphics and making it known. So go ahead and share all their posts whenever they do something. But yeah, I think that's a really good place to start as far as the diaspora perspective.
If I may ask you a question. I heard you say that you're trying to disassociate from the Ethiopian identity. Could you elaborate a bit on what that means? Is it more to do with the frustration of feeling like the rest of Ethiopia is just kind of ignoring what's going on and not necessarily participating in it? Or is it because you really are feeling that dissociation from Ethiopia and your identity as Ethiopian?
No, it's just because I'm just trying to be as specific as possible with identifying myself, because, you know, like, for example, some people say they're Habesha. That's like as broad as you can be, or just say you're African. That's like way too broad. So instead of just saying I'm Ethiopian, I've been trying to, you know, pin it down and, you know, just get, because a lot of people, when they think Ethiopian, they think Amara anyways, at the end of the day. Like, so I might as well just like make my ethnicity first, because at the end of the day, Ethiopian is a nationality, it's not ethnicity. It's not really, it's not what's, I don't know, in your blood. Like some people might be mixed, like ethnicities and whatnot, but in my case, like the amount of ethnicities is like the only thing that I identify with. So that's why I've been trying to like distance myself away from Ethiopian identity. Maybe if I was mixed with other ethnicities, I wouldn't be saying that. But that's just my perspective personally.
Yeah, it's an interesting perspective, actually, having taken the time to really think about what that means. I think maybe some of the way in which we approach these kind of conversations, I worry, I don't know if you guys could add to it as well, if we're perpetuating the same you know, division and situation that we have been handed down, as we talked about, like how, you know, TPLF really used it as a way to divide and conquer. And if we have a way to come out of it, yes, we do need strong leadership in every area, in every region of Ethiopia. We do need a better way of organizing our society. But how do we come out of it, especially because, as you had just mentioned, Dagmawi, like, not a lot of people may necessarily identify as Amhara, right? Not everybody probably hasn't been exposed to really differentiating between the Ethiopian culture and the Mahara culture, so they don't really understand what's going on. And there are also a lot of people that are mixed, as we've seen, and as you know, we could have this conversation as well. How do we make sure that we advocate for one group and also keep in mind, or I guess not isolate other groups in our activism? And how do we make sure that we're staying grounded in that sense of we first advocate for human beings, and then of course, as Kasa mentioned, that like human beings is part of the need for the Amara advocacy. But how do we make sure that we don't disassociate one from the other?
Well, Amaras are human beings, so to me, just because you're speaking up for Amaras does not mean that you're isolating any other ethnic group. And we are not living in a time where we have room to advocate for people that are already under advocated for. That's my personal belief. I think that it's very, very important that, in fact, more people advocate for Amaras at this time. As an Amara person and the things that witness the type of images that I've seen. I haven't seen those things happening to other people, and it doesn't mean that maybe they've happened or not. But I know for a fact that if those things were happening to other ethnic groups, those ethnic groups within themselves would advocate for themselves and only themselves, just like we see now. So I think it's really important to not shy away from prioritizing your people. And I personally believe when you're advocating for Amaras, you are advocating for Ethiopia, you are advocating for human beings. So it does not, like the Amara life is not less than any other life at all. And it gets frustrating sometimes when people bring this up. And the first thing I ask is like, hey, have you advocated? I've never seen any other ethnic group. And in fact, not just other ethnic groups, we even have a hard time getting our own community to advocate for our people. So when you have over 2 million people who have been internally displaced, when you are seeing pregnant mothers having their fetuses removed, when you are seeing bodies burned alive, when you see hundreds of thousands of Amaras being killed in the last few decades, and over 50,000 Amaras have been killed in just the last year. And to have that type of question and think about other people is really hard for me. And I'm going to be very honest with you. I don't have room to advocate for anything but Amara people until the Amara genocide stops, until I see other people advocate for us. You know, the thing is, Amaras have always advocated for others. They've always protested anytime there's something going on in Ethiopia. Other groups have been hurt. But when this is happening to our people, everyone else is silent. You know, including Ethiopians, including Amaras themselves. So we can't think about anybody but Amaras until the whole entire world is talking about the Amara genocide, until the Amara genocide stops, until justice is served for every single Amara life that has been lost and can continue to lose.
And I think that's something that, thank you for bringing that up, something that I've definitely noticed, especially when, the Mahara Protest started becoming big in the last few months. There was a lot of pushback from within the Ethiopian community talking about, why are you doing this now? Because Ethiopia's already, in the middle of the chaos thing. You can't bring this up anymore. Like, you can't bring it up now. Let's talk about it later kind of sense, where we're almost negotiating whose life is more accounted for and what is okay and who's okay to lose. And now that sense of not fully understanding that people are in pain and this is going on every day. People are not safe. When you go to sleep, you want to be safe. You want to make sure that you're going to wake up the next morning. And that constant threats of a life that ethnically Amara people are living, especially in Metekel and Oromia region, is almost like it's expected to be ignored. It's expected to be, business as usual. Let's first take care of what's going on in Tigray and TPLF, and then we'll come back to this. It's almost that sense of like, let's deprioritize it because it's not as bad, or what's going on in Tigray and what the government is doing is a lot more important than what they're not doing within the region of Oromia and Metekel, in that sense of let's not prioritize it now, which I found really quite fascinating and really frustrating, because I think if we are going to talk about the issues of Ethiopia, if we're going to talk about humanity, if we're going to talk about who's dying, that shouldn't prevent us from, political situation shouldn't prevent us from talking about it, right? There's no priority of which ethnic group or which situation needs to be prioritized. If the government is not able to take care of its people, we should say government is not able to take care of its people. Our loyalty cannot be to the government. Our loyalty first and foremost has to be to the people. And then once we realize that, we could talk about everything that's happening in Ethiopia without feeling like, talking about the Amara genocide is like, losing somehow. I've seen that sentiment, and I'm having a hard time understanding it. And it's almost like, don't talk about it now. And that's why I was asking Dagmawi, like, how did you get to this conclusion? Because I could see how frustrating it is and how dismissive people tend to be when it comes to what's going on within Amara region, because it's almost like, yes, we could wait until later on to talk about this. I know, Dagmawi, you have to leave. Could you just give us, last thoughts and what we could do, and any other words that you have for us, and any international companies?
Oh yeah, sorry, I have to leave a little bit early, unfortunately, but you guys can continue if you want. But just my last points, I want everybody to just, like I said before, go to amharaamerica.org and donate to Amhara Association of America. They're going to do a lot of big things for our people, and they're hiring lobbyists in DC to, present our issue in front of, senators and things like that. So I have a lot of faith in Amhara Association of America. So please go ahead and donate there. And everybody go on Instagram, follow Amhara_awareness if you haven't already. And I believe they are also on Twitter, Amhara Awareness. So go ahead and look them up and give them a follow and share that to all of your friends. And that will help us continue this advocacy for our people and supporting the people on the ground back home.
Thank you for those words, and we'll definitely share that information down in our chat list, and you can also see it right in front of you. You guys can go ahead and, like you said, follow the work and really study up on the history and the activism that we do have. Thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Dr.
For those of you that are just joining us, we're talking about the Amara, the advocacy and activism that we're seeing in the last few months, especially the uptake of it, and what that means, what the vision and purpose of that movement is, and what we could do as us as Ethiopians, or people you may identify as ethnically Amara or not. But this is definitely an issue for Ethiopia. This is definitely an issue of, of humanity. So this is something that we should care about. We should participate in, we should try and help before anything else, regardless of who the government is and what the government is doing and not doing. That should be our priority. And I'd like to ask everybody to like and share this conversation, and we'll continue the conversation as well as Zenash. So what has been the difficulties of this activism that you've been part of so far?
So I think one of the biggest difficulties that other people and I have faced, specifically, I guess I can talk about myself here, is that a lot of times when you advocate for our Amaras, especially the Amara genocide, kind of like what you brought up earlier, many Ethiopians are shying away from that under the name of Ethiopia, because they don't want, oh my gosh, there's already a conflict going on up north. We don't want the world to know what's happening. They want to protect the sovereignty of Ethiopia. They want to protect this image of Ethiopia that does not exist. And so I think that people need to start being really honest with themselves. And if they truly, truly care about Ethiopia, then they need to care about the Amara genocide and protect the Amaras that are facing this genocide in the Oromia, Mataka, Benishangul region. And also understand that your humanity should always come first. If there are no people, there is no country. So when we talk about, Ethiopia this, Ethiopia that, if the people of the country are wiped out, you won't really have a country. Same like people who are in support of the federal government or in support of protecting Ethiopia's image. Your humanity should come first. And I've noticed that's been kind of a trend with certain people that I've talked to or things that I've seen online. People really care about protecting Ethiopia's image. And you should be ashamed of yourself, in my opinion. We need to put our humanity before anything. And if we care about Ethiopia, if we care about the most unison Ethiopian group, in my opinion, which are Amaras, we need to be able to stand up for Amaras. And this whole thing of being, I guess in Amara, they call it Zerenya. When you're talking about Amaras, they're like, oh, you're being Zerenya, which is completely false to me. That's just a way of silencing the truth, because Amaras have never been known to be racist or to be discriminatory. They have intermixed with other people. They have lived with all ethnic groups peacefully, other religions. They've married within other ethnic groups. So when people say those things to me, I look at it like, they just want to silence the truth, and they don't care that Amaras are dying. But if it was their ethnic group that was dying, they would be protesting that, or they would be speaking about that. And why is it that anytime other ethnic groups talk about what's happening to their people, I've never seen a pushback from the Ethiopian community? I don't know if it's because they're used to them doing that. And I know, like I said earlier in the beginning, Amaras are not known as saying they're Amara. We've always been Ethiopian. But when we're being killed, not because we're Ethiopian, we have to say it for what it is. And we have normalized being killed for decades. So I think this Ethiopian American generation, I love the fact that there's people like you, Dagam, and other people who are willing to openly have these conversations, openly advocate for Amaras that are being ethnically targeted. And they're not used to that. But they better get used to it, because I'm not going to stop. I've had a lot of people try and discourage me from speaking about the Amara genocide, again, under the name of Ethiopia, or simply the fact that they do not care that Amaras are dying. And so for me, it's, I wouldn't say that it's a super pushback or difficulty. If anything, it empowers me even more, because I see that there are many people that are inspired and motivated by it. I've had people reach out to me saying like, wow, I can't believe I've been ignoring this, or, oh my God, I'm just now learning about the Amara genocide. For example, I went to a protest this last weekend, not necessarily support in that protest, but to create awareness. And it wasn't a protest for Amara genocide. It was a protest for what's been going on between Palestine and Israel. But I went there specifically with the sign behind me that you can see, which is that says Amara. And then the Amara resistance hands. I had myself Amara genocide t-shirt on. And I had so many people take pictures of me, come up to me, and let me know that they know about the Amara genocide. They know what's happening. So this shows that, what we're doing on our social media, even if it's just a post, if it's our Twitter campaigns, they are starting to really have an effect. And none of these people were Habesha either, which was Greater Ethiopian or Amara. So like I said, for me, it's more empowering. And I want to inspire and motivate Ethiopian Americans and Ethiopians all over the world, and not just Ethiopians, but people to start talking about this, because it has gotten absolutely zero media attention. It's gotten zero justice. It's gone on for way too long. And the more people that we have advocating, the more pressure that we apply, we're going to see a stop. Eventually, it's going to have to stop. It needs to stop now. But until it stops, we can't be quiet. This normalizing death, normalizing genocide in the Ethiopian community under the name of Ethiopia and unity needs to completely stop.
And I think another thing that, especially with the division that we were talking about earlier, and how really it's becoming harder and harder to stay with the identity of Ethiopia, because there's a lot of things going on. One thing I'm noticing is, as far as advocacy goes, there were these posts that were going around on Instagram about a month ago, which I was just really confused about, where people that are advocating for the Amhara genocide were saying the reason why I've been silent until today is because, people call me names. The reason why I've been silent until today is because when I advocate for what's going on within, the Amhara ethnic groups, I am called, like, I'm what do you call it? Like, I'm speaking against what's going on in Tigray, or I'm speaking against something else. And I wonder sometimes if we really gotten matured enough, especially within the youth, because I feel like Instagram is mostly for the youth, that to really understand that me speaking about what's going on in Tigray doesn't mean or negate what's going on within the Oromia region or within the Tekkel or anything like that, where it feels like there's a competition of suffering that we are participating in. And I really do believe this comes down to really the division that we've been fed in the last 30, 40 years, especially within the TPLF manifesto, and how we're understanding ourselves and us as Ethiopians. Because I've talked to some people as well that don't necessarily identify as Amhara, but don't know how to participate. And that kind of leaves me confused, because I don't care who's dying. Who's dying is Ethiopian. If you're not necessarily Amhara, if you don't identify as such, who's dying is Ethiopian. And you as Ethiopian should feel comfortable, and you should feel the right to advocate for these groups, as opposed to just watching what's going on and not participating in the conversation and feeling like you're outside of it, right? I don't know if you noticed that, and if you have any comments on that as well.
Yeah, definitely. I understand that, some people are, I guess you could say, sensitive. I think that in order to advocate for anything, you have to believe in what you're advocating for first. So just because you know that there's a genocide going on or there's a war going on, if you don't truly believe what's happening is wrong in your heart, you're not going to be able to advocate properly. And number two, you have to be very mentally strong. So when people say things to me like, oh, I don't want to be called names, I look at it like, what's more important, you being called a name or another mother being burned alive or another family being burned alive. So, I do here and there, I do get people who try their best to disencourage me by calling me names or sending me, mean messages. But really, like I said, you have to be very mentally strong. It only empowers me. Do not allow that to disencourage you to speak up for Amaras, because again, you don't see any other ethnic group shying away from speaking up for their people as they shouldn't. And so it's really, really important to really think about these people instead of worrying about yourself and what someone's going to say to you online that probably is coming from, a fake page. And these people will never say these things, by the way, face to face. Everybody is very confident behind a laptop or behind their phone. But they will never, I've never had anybody say anything to my face. I've been around people that will say a lot on the internet, but are like literally mouses in real life. So I say, instead of thinking about yourself, think about your privilege here. We have the opportunity, people back home don't have the same opportunities as us to speak up for our people in a safe manner, at least, So because we have that opportunity, think about what would you want people to do for you if you were in that situation, if you were an Amara living in Oromia region or Matakal right now. Would you want someone to say, oh yeah, somebody was calling me a name or somebody's going to call me a name and I can't handle that. You really got to be stronger. You really have to be strong. And like you said, it comes with maturity too, because I've noticed based on the age gaps, how different Amaras advocate differently. And also how certain people are more affected by the online bullying. And I'm not saying that we don't matter too, because we also matter, but you need to find a balance. You need to be able to stick up for your people, because what part of history do you want to be in? When I look back and one day this is going to end, trust me, I don't want I want everyone to know, trust me, this is going to come to an end. Sometimes people think, they lose hope and they think, this is going to be Ethiopia forever. It's not. And trust me, Amaras have, based off all of their history, there's no way that this is going to be a long-term thing that is going to continue to happen. Enough is enough. It needs to stop now. But I don't want people to give up hope and understand how important it is to be a voice, because we are kind of their strength from afar. And I want Ethiopians and Amaras to know that we do care about you guys too. I don't want them to feel left out at all and feel that we don't care. So I feel like it's so important to really, really put yourself in a mother's position, a father's position, a poor farmer's position. And think, what would I want people to do for me during this time? And if our voice is free, it doesn't cost anything. It costs a minute of our time. Why not be a voice for your people?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for those words. The only thing I would add to that is, this separation that we feel to Ethiopians in general, right? When we're turning our eyes away when somebody's suffering because it's not us. I don't quite understand what that means. Honestly, I have such a hard time really grasping the concept of it's not my people dying, it's Ethiopians dying, right? And the same with what's going on in Tigray, not to mix up conversations here, but we see people starving, we see people suffering, and we're not people have such a hard time understanding that because we're so caught up in trying to support a government or trying to support an ideology. The same with what's going on in Oromia. I think I'll continue to say this first and foremost, our loyalty is not to the government. It should never be to the government, never. Our loyalty should first and foremost be to the people of Ethiopia. And in that sense, me as an Ethiopian, right, I may not identify as Amara, or I may not identify as Tigray or Oromo or Gurage or any of the ethnic groups. I may be mixed, you know, but by the end of the day, I'm Ethiopian. So I am required, I'm expected to talk about what's going on, the sufferings of my people, especially because this is not something that's happening randomly. This is happening targeted for people to get into power. Right? What's happening in Oromia is all about power. Yes, you can manipulate it however way you want to, but somebody's trying to get power. And the people that are suffering are those that still don't have 3 meals to eat. What's going on in Tigray is about power. But the people that are dying are those that don't have 3 meals to eat, let alone talk about what's going on next year or who's going to need power and such. So it's really, as Ethiopians, we need to really be vigilant and understanding that what's going on in Ethiopia, in any area of Ethiopia, affects us and should affect us and should bother us and should make us say, you know what, this should not happen. And, you know, we're proud people, like you said, and we always pride ourselves in how, you know, humble we are and how great we are and all that stuff. But how is it that we feel compassion to when we see what's going on in Israel and Pakistan or Palestine, sorry, but we don't feel the need to share or talk about what's going on in Ethiopia because all of a sudden that we have this separation of our humanity when it comes to our own people. I find it quite annoying, but at the same time, I think I gain a little bit of insights and compassion as to what's been going on within the country as far as the division goes.
Yeah, speaking of the whole, not to get too deep into that, but I noticed this last week with everything going on in Israel and Palestine, I was very, very bothered, extremely bothered and disturbed by the amount of Ethiopians that were changing their profile pictures to other country flags. Some people even going out to protest that I saw while I was out there protesting Amara genocide. And I think that first, it's very important to be empathetic and compassionate. What's happening to those people is wrong too. And I condemn any type of violence against innocent people. But before you go out and protest what's going on in other countries, you need to protest what's going on in your own country, what's happening on your own people, because those people are not people who I've personally, I can't say that I've ever seen them. And even within the past year, I'm sure they've seen what's been going on all over Ethiopia. You've never seen them at an Ethiopian protest. You've never seen them at an Amara genocide protest. And besides just protesting, I've never even seen them post about it on their social media. So I was really kind of heartbroken when I saw that, because I saw lots and lots of Ethiopians so quick to talk and post about it, but ignore what's happening to their own people. And so you can't claim that you're such a proud Ethiopian, but not speak up for your people.
Absolutely. We had a guest previously, they were part of the Peace and Justice for Ethiopia movement, and they talked about this, and especially when it comes to, you know, social media and all the big Habesha pages that we have. And they've gone and talked to a few of them to say, hey, could you share this information about what's going on in Ethiopia? And their response was, oh, I don't want to lose followers. And I find that very fascinating, because you're not really for Ethiopia, you're just about, you know, the decorative part of it, like you mentioned earlier, and not really the stand by people. But these are the same pages that were quick to post about, like you said, Palestine and Israel, quick to post about what was going on in Nigeria and Zimbabwe and all that stuff, this whole like fake Pan-Africanism that we have, without even wanting or to talk about what's going on in our own backyard. So that's the one very interesting that I noticed as well. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think, you know, being a proud Ethiopian, you have to be not necessarily proud of the suffering, but you have to be just as against the suffering that's happening to Ethiopians, and specifically during this time, what's happening to Amara people. So we can't just only focus on the positive things or the past positive history and just pretend that nothing is going on in Ethiopia, and Amaras are not facing a genocide. I find that very disturbing, and I noticed that a lot just recently. I think a few days ago, there was a whole protest. There was an Amara genocide protest in DC during the day, and then in the afternoon, there was I guess what you would call a pro-government protest, where people were dancing in the streets, oh, Ethiopia, Ethiopia, this, Ethiopia, that, which is great, but this is really not the time to be dancing when people are being slaughtered. Amaras are being slaughtered every single day. It doesn't matter that we're not seeing it in large numbers, it's still happening. And so you can't be a proud Ethiopian and not stand up for Amara people, especially when Amaras are really the main ethnic group in Ethiopia who have stood for the unity of Ethiopia. They are the glue to Ethiopia. They're the ones who believe in Ethiopianism more than any other ethnic group, in my opinion. So if you care about Ethiopia, you have to stand up for Amaras. And again, like you said earlier, Hiwat, we have to put humanity before any political group. We have to put humanity over the Ethiopian government, especially when the Ethiopian government has completely failed to protect Amara civilians.
Just one more topic I want to bring up, especially with what's been going on in Metakal, I guess. There's been this deal that was made between, the militia of Metakal that's been working chaos within that region, especially as a prosecution of ethnic Amara people, and the deal that was made between the governments and these rebels. I'll call them rebels. It's in Amharic, but just for our viewers to really see this document, I know the Amharic version of this event has been done very well. So we'll go ahead and share that with everybody just to make sure that you all really fully comprehend and understand what's going on as far as what they're trying to do within Metakal. The idea is basically Zenash to say government will give these rebels full forgiveness. Not only are they going to be forgiven for what they've been doing, they're also going to be given land and power within the structure of the government. And it makes me wonder what kind of precedent we're setting up when it comes to this. And I've also heard people say, this is, the best way the government could make this stop, because if they don't have a lot of resources and just kind of trying to make excuses for the government without the government themselves coming out and telling us this is why we did it, right? We're just kind of left to assume and decode what the reasoning behind is, but they've been fully forgiven and we'll be expecting them to be within the structure of the government, I'm guessing in the next few weeks or few months coming up. How do you find this, and what kind of precedent is this really setting?
Well, I find that type of news, honestly, it's very disturbing to hear that. And really what that says is that the Amara life doesn't matter, and that there's going to be nothing done about what's happening to Amaras if we are forgiving the killers. I think if there's anybody that needs to forgive or wants to forgive, is going to have to be the Amara ethnic group themselves. It's the government's responsibility to hold these people accountable for the human rights violations that they've committed against the Amara people. So really what it's telling us is that they're complicit to the crimes, and that's their way of hiding it. And I'm really shocked to hear something like this. And I really hope that this isn't true, because it's really scary to hear something like that. That means that people are going to continue to die and be rewarded for it. What kind of example are we setting here? What are we blatantly saying that Amara life does not matter? It's not important enough. It doesn't deserve justice. So it's completely wrong. And whoever made this deal needs to be held accountable. They are just as responsible for those who have committed the murders and the genocide against Amara people.
And I think my reaction was the same too. My first reaction was to laugh, because I really thought it was a prank. I didn't really believe this could possibly happen, because especially when we're talking about, peace, as they are continue to mention this within this document. The idea of peace and reconciliation doesn't happen, like you said, between the government and the perpetrators of the crime. It happens between the people that lost their loved ones and the people that killed their loved ones, and that's the community work that needs to happen. It's not and also knowing that within what's happening, without them apologizing to the people, without taking any kind of accountability. Maybe it's difficult to send, 20,000 I don't know how many militias is being accused here or how many there were part of this structure, but however many hundreds or thousands are there in, maybe it's difficult to send all of them to what we assume to be, what we know as justice. But there definitely needs to be some kind of accountability, some kind of conversation between the community and them that they have affected. The government can't just walk in and say, you're forgiven now. And by the way, I'm going to go ahead and give you land, and I'm going to go ahead and give you power within the government structure. Another thing that bothers me about this as well is, as we've heard the Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed continue to say, what's been going on in Oromia is perpetrated by people within the government. So how is it now you're going to create the same problem in Metekel where these folks are going to have access to government information? And it's really quite disturbing for me. And your reaction is the same as mine. I was just like, this can't be real. I hope this isn't real, but it is real and it's been signed. And we're going to have to see what's going to happen next, because I worry about the precedent as well. And there might be a reason for this, right? But that reason needs to be talked about and discussed with the people, with the victims specifically, from the government, as opposed to this document just kind of like slipping out and not necessarily getting the full acknowledgements of the government. Is where I'm at with this.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. It's really an insult to the Amara people. There's no reason why people who are responsible for committing genocide on the Amara people can now go ahead and rule those people and be given power. So it's the government is basically saying, you can commit genocide on people and we're not going to do anything about it. So that also shows that they too are a part of those crimes. Because what is it that they're trying to cover up?
Absolutely. For those of you that have just joined us, we're having a conversation about the Mahara Protest movement that we've seen within the U.S. specifically, but across the board, about what trying to give advocacy to what's been going on in Ethiopia, to ethnically Amara people. I'd like to ask everybody to go ahead and like and share this conversation, and we'll be back after a quick break.
Adababa Media Yanina. Adababa Media Yanina. Adababa Media Yanina. Adababa Media Yahulachinam. Yangametasab Adababa Media in Malakatalian Nantas. Do your parents watch Adababa Media? Watch, follow, subscribe, and help Adababa. Adababa Media. Logan Tangina Jarvan Yasata.
Thank you everyone for joining us. Our guests were Zenash and Dagmawi. Please go ahead and have this conversation with your loved one and really have a clear vision and understanding for what you want Ethiopia to look like and how we want to continue as a nation, and really feel comfortable really talking about any injustice within the country, because you can't pick and choose. We really can't pick and choose. And as we do that, I think there's a sense of losing our compassion and humanity. So let's make sure that we always speak about all the victims in Ethiopia, regardless of what ethnic groups there are, especially with what's going on right now within Oromia and Metekel region, where people are specifically being targeted for being a certain faith and certain ethnic group. We're at the end of our conversation here with Zenash, who is a youth activist. And I love that, because I think sometimes, when people talk about what's going on in Ethiopia, there's that sense of like, oh, people are talking about the old Ethiopia, because we see a lot of older people representing the ideas, and really gives us access to that excuse of like, oh, that's just the old Ethiopia they're talking about. But old Ethiopia or new Ethiopia, I think we have a vision for Ethiopia that lives in peace, and that's not limited to age. So I love seeing the youth coming, our friends, and talk about the atrocities being committed in Ethiopia as a nation. To kind of wrap up our conversation, I love asking these questions to my guests. So what does being Ethiopian mean to you?
So being Ethiopian to me is where all Ethiopians from all ethnic groups embrace each other, love each other, respect each other, and can most importantly live anywhere in Ethiopia and be respected. I think that without that, we can't be proud about being Ethiopian right now. I think it's very, very important that human life, all human life in Ethiopia is respected.
I love that. And I think something that I've been seeing, recently is it's really exhausting. At least for me, being Ethiopian right now, or actually standing by it, because there's a lot going on that I'm really ashamed of for my people and what we're doing to each other, right? But at the same time, though, like if I say I'm not Ethiopian now because things are hard, I was never one. And I see a lot of people saying like, "Oh, I'm not Ethiopian no more. I'm this and that." And for me, it's this marriage with Ethiopia is not necessarily only when things are good and happy and dandy, but when it's really as hard as it is right now. When your friends are reaching out to you, talking about what's going on in Ethiopia and who's doing what. And when you're feeling really ashamed because your coworkers are talking about it and all that stuff, and you really want people to see only the good part of Ethiopia. And this is a time for me to say, you know what, yes, I'm Ethiopian because all the good and the bad I'll accept, and that's where I'm from. Another one is, what is your vision for Ethiopia?
Well, my vision in Ethiopia would really be similar to, what being Ethiopian is, again, where Ethiopians from all ethnic groups can live peacefully, can live anywhere they want in Ethiopia, be respected, and that human life is respected. My other vision for Ethiopia is that the Ethiopian federal government becomes a true democratic government, not what it is now, this fake prosperity, this fake democracy that they've been spewing, where majority of the government is basically Oromo. I believe that all ethnic groups deserve to be a part of the federal government, not just local government, but federal government, and be given equal opportunity to not just represent their ethnic group, but represent Ethiopia as a whole. I think it really starts there. And then third would be that law and order is real, that justice is served, that anytime people are being killed, their killers are imprisoned, or if not, receive the same exact fate that they've done to other people. I'm really, really sick of seeing crimes being committed against humanity and absolutely nothing being done about it. I mean, these crimes are being openly committed. They are being spread all over social media. And those people are going to go, they get to go to sleep at night where our people are dying. I really want to see every single Amara victim receive justice, every single one of them. It's really, really, really bothers me that every day I wake up, I see something either on YouTube, I see something on Instagram. I don't care if it's one person. No person should die in Ethiopia based off their ethnicity. And I want to see the Amara genocide stop as soon as possible. I want the federal government held responsible for what's happened to the Amara ethnic group. I want the Oromia Special Forces, the Oromo Liberation Front, Shimallis Abdiisa, and everybody associated with the Amara genocide to be held accountable for what they've done.
Yeah, I like that. I think as you're speaking, that's something that brings to mind is how nonchalant our leaders are when it comes to what's going on with ethnic Amara people. And there's this one speech Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed did after all the protests that went on within the Amara region, where he basically talks about which is to say, every time if there's like some little things happen, if we're gonna go out there and protest, we're really gonna lose Ethiopia, right? That like basically terrorizing people into submission, and comparing that what's been going on in Adani specifically was talking about that, to compare it as something small that happened. And really like making me question really what's the compassion and what is the incentive for our leaders to protect people, right? To protect people that may not have political power as other ethnic groups may have, and continue to perpetuate this idea of like, if you really speak, Ethiopia will fall apart. And pretending that, the death or the blood of ethnic Amara people or the Christians that are being killed is the ground in which Ethiopia is going to stand in, and the only ground in which they can stand in. So thank you for saying that. We'll be keeping our leaders accountable for what's been going on in Ethiopia. Do you have any last words that you want to share with our viewers before we close out here?
Yeah, I want to thank you so much, Hewat, for giving us this platform today to speak on what's happening to the Amara people. I want to encourage not just Amaras, but Ethiopians and people all over the world to speak up against the crimes that are being done to the Amara people, to educate people on the Amara genocide until the Amara genocide stops. Mm-hmm. I want people to be stronger than the internet bullying and speak up for Amara people and understand that our people depend on our voices during this time. And always think about, what would you want someone to do if you were living in Ethiopia right now in a region where people were being ethnically targeted and killed every single day? And just think about that and how you would want others to speak up for you. And then the third thing I would like to say is that, like Dagam said earlier, please follow Amara Awareness on Instagram. They've done a pretty good job at kind of keeping up with what's been happening in Ethiopia as far as the Amara genocide. We have actually a lot of pages. So really, if you hashtag Amara on Instagram, multiple pages will come up. I also want people to get connected with the Amara Association of America. They have done a really good job for advocating for Amaras, not just now during this genocide, but really since they've started 2016. A special thanks to Tedros Terfe, who has done a really good job at representing us. And that you need to go to www.amaraassociationofamerica.org. And that's really all I have to say. Thank you so much again for giving us this platform to have this conversation. And please, everybody, pray for Ethiopia, pray for the victims of the Amara genocide, and let's continue to do our best as Ethiopians to speak out for victims and not be silent under the name of Ethiopia. If we want to continue to see Ethiopia, we need to have the Amara people. There's absolutely no Ethiopia without Amaras.
Thank you for that, and thank you so much for coming out here and share your ideas and your movement as well. I really appreciate it. I know it took some time for us to coordinate this as well, because everybody's busy in such these days. But I've been following your work, and I just want to say thank you for the awareness or you bringing to the conversation. And I've really learned quite a lot from this conversation and many of the Amara awareness movements that I see on Instagram, and I really value that. So thank you for being here. And everyone that's been part of this conversation as well, please go ahead and like and share this conversation. It's really important for us to continue to have this dialogue. We may not have agreed with everything that we said, but I'm sure there's some things that you could take away from this conversation. But I'll say it again. I think I'll continue to say this over and over again. Our loyalty cannot be to the governments. Our loyalty should be to the people. And when the government does something good, we should be able to say they did an amazing job. And when they do something that may not necessarily be celebratory, we should say they should do better. I think we are those that should keep them accountable. The people are who keeps the government accountable. And I don't feel like we're doing that right now with what's going on in Ethiopia, specifically with Amhara genocide. So let's make sure that our loyalty is to the people again. And like she said, let's pray and really keep the victims in our hearts and minds, and hope that God visits our country that we love so much. Thank you for joining us. Like we said earlier, this is a Dagmawi Media Spirit Digest program, an English program that we have every week on Sundays. We'll bring a different conversation and next week. Until then, have a wonderful week.
Thank you.